Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone here. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is a little bit later, because we start each one of our classes with meditation. This individual that we refer to as the Buddha, he figured out how to get to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. And this is why we start our classes with meditation. So I'm going to guide you guys in a breathing mindfulness meditation, which is going to help you guys to train your mind. But there's much more that you need than just meditation. That's why afterwards we're going to be studying the original teachings of the Buddha to be able to help you guys see more of what he actually taught. If you guys would like to join for the meditation, the way that we start this is with some chanting. I have the chants on the laminated sheets over there on the cabinet. If you'd like to help yourself, you're more than welcome to get one and chant along as part of our meditation. For those of you guys that are online, you'll find these chanting sheets on our website at buddhadailywisdom.com. You can click on free books and then just scroll down towards the bottom and you'll be able to see the chanting sheets that we're handing out here at the temple. If you understand the origins of chanting, you understand that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. If you're seeing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer attributed to the teachings of the Buddha, these aren't actually his teachings. There's nothing that he ever taught that involves rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. Everything that he taught is about training your mind now in the present moment. There's no amount of sprinkling of water or tying strings on your wrist or anything like this that's going to actually improve the way that your mind functions in your day-to-day life. So everything the Buddha taught is about how to train your mind. So these chants actually originate, or at least the idea of chanting originates with the Buddha as he was sharing his teachings. He used chanting as a way for his students to be able to remember his teachings. That every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. So he used chanting as a learning tool, as a learning device. We don't need to do that anymore today because we have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this to be able to help people learn the teachings. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they just recited his teachings orally because everything was oral that he taught. There was no ability to write things down during his lifetime 2,500 years ago. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would just recite his teachings orally as a way to help them commit it to memory. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. If you read the English translations of these chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't even think that the Buddha created these chants. They were probably created by his students either during his life or after his death. Because an individual who's gotten to enlightenment, and surely a Buddha, wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, right? This would be arrogance or ego if somebody chose to do this. So that's why I know that these chants weren't created by the Buddha. But if you learned how to move from the anger, sadness, and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is enlightenment, and this teacher didn't want anything or expect anything from you, they were just helping you out of the kindness of their heart, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I suspect these came from his students. So if you'd like to chant these as I chant them as we ease into meditation, you'll get more benefit out of the meditation because it kind of exercises the mind a little bit, helps you to build some awareness of mind and awareness of the breath as you ease into the meditation. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance where I'm essentially going to be instructing you and teaching you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. You'll hear me doing that as we're meditating. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where it's just quiet and all of us are meditating. Now, during that period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. And if you're in meditation where you have a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be frustrated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. This is why you can actually eliminate these feelings, is because it's your own mind that's causing them. Oftentimes people think that they get angry because of something externally. They might think their mom or dad is making them angry, or their brothers and sisters are frustrating them, or their boss is annoying them. It's not actually true. It's actually coming from your own mind. This is the mind craving permanence while you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is constantly changing. So if you understand this, when you're in meditation and you hear a sound, you understand that that sound is going to arise, it's going to change, and it's going to fade away. You can see that the world's working exactly the way it's intended to, where things are constantly changing. So if you hear sounds during meditation, that's normal. You can just continue to focus on the breath, and you'll see the guidance that I'm going to share with you is if your mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and come back to the breath. After that period of time of quietness, we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times. These are like different tools that you would use during your journey to enlightenment. And you would need these different positions because your body can't be in the same position permanently. It's not possible. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys some guidance on the seated position to be able to help you to find something that's comfortable. But keep in mind that what I'm going to share with you are just recommendations or suggestions, because everybody's body's different and everybody's going to find something that's comfortable, that's going to be different. So you can use anything that I'm sharing with you, but also if you find something on your own, you can use that too, because not everybody's going to be able to sit in exactly the same position because of the universal truth of impermanence. So you could be sitting on the floor, you could be in a chair, maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa in a wheelchair, you can sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This is going to kind of help soften the seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, you like to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. So that's an option for you as well. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you. And the same thing's true for anybody who's in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair here with my legs crossed, so that's an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect. With your sternum up and your shoulders back, it's going to help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So if you were kind of slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back to not only keep the mind attentive and alert, but it also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do some chanting here, which you guys are welcome to join in on, and then I'm going to come back in with some guidance to help you. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Iti piso emagawa Arahang Sama Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go. and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิ สวากขาโตมหาเกวตาตัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังปุตโตภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone online as well. This meditation is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is one of the primary forms of training that the Buddha used in order to move his mind to enlightenment. But as I shared, you would need to know much more than just meditation to get to enlightenment. You can't just meditate your way to enlightenment. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and then instantly got to enlightenment. And this isn't actually true. It's through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that you train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. This individual that we refer to as the Buddha, he started out as Siddhartha Gautama. That was his name. He was born over 2,500 years ago in a region of the world that we refer to as Nepal, and he taught in northeast India. And during his lifetime, he figured out how to get to this mental state of enlightenment, where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. As I mentioned, by the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You would have eliminated all the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of that can be uprooted out of the mind through training of the mind. The Buddha discovered these causes and conditions, these pollutions that are in the mind, and he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to uproot those and get those out of the mind. And as you do, you'll see that the mind's becoming more peaceful and joyful as you're getting closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. Not only that, but you'll notice that the mind's focused. You have concentration, clarity, and deep memory. You'll notice that your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming, because you're not bitter and harsh and hostile any longer. Oftentimes people think that that bitterness and harshness and hostility is actually coming from the other person, where in reality it's coming from your own mind. And you can actually uproot that, train your mind to no longer do that. Because as long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships, all of that is just coming back to you. You can see that in those relationships where you're bitter and harsh and hostile, those people are bitter and harsh and hostile right back to you. So there's actually a solution here that the Buddha figured out how to train your mind to get to the point where you're no longer experiencing those types of things. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even be experiencing a bad mood anymore. It's physically impossible for you to experience something like a bad mood. Because again, the causes and conditions that are producing it have been uprooted from the mind. So the teachings of the Buddha aren't about a bunch of beliefs of things that you believe and then hope something good happens when you die. It's also not a bunch of rules and commandments that everybody must follow. And there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer as part of his teachings. If you're being exposed to these kinds of things as part of the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't the teachings of the Buddha. He never taught to believe him. He actually taught to investigate and examine his teachings, to then reflect on them, to independently verify if they're true or they're false, and then practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life, making decisions through those teachings. And now that's where you'll see the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. So it's through the intellectual learning, investigation, and examination that you can actually start to understand his teachings. So what we do as part of this program here, and as part of all the offerings that I share, is I help students to be able to understand his teachings through providing you the resources that you need, like books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, personal guidance, classes, courses, retreats, to be able to help you gradually learn the teachings of the Buddha. And I do that at no cost. Everything that's available to you, there's no cost associated with it at all. Whether you're here in Chiang Mai or you travel around, you can actually join our classes through our live stream, through attending classes here. And there's even recordings that if you can't attend live, you can actually learn this path of how to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. Oftentimes people are starting in our Sunday and Wednesday program, which is called our group learning program. What I do in that program is I go chapter by chapter in this book. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's volume 1 of our book series. Each Sunday I go chapter by chapter, helping students to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. And then on Wednesdays we do meditation, and I open up to any and all questions as students have. And on Sundays we do meditation as well. This Sunday, we're actually going to be in chapter 24, which is titled Misunderstandings of Gotama Buddha's Teachings. This is where I have 9 different misunderstandings that are very common in the world that you will see associated with the teachings of the Buddha, because as long as you have these misunderstandings, you would be misled to understand what the Buddha actually taught. The Buddha taught during his lifetime that it would be unwise to change his teachings, because by changing his teachings, it's causing harm to you, because you can't actually get to enlightenment if you change his teachings. And then also if somebody shares those teachings with others, it's causing harm to them too. So the Buddha taught that changing his teachings would cause harm to you and countless other people. But unfortunately, over the last 2,500 years, there's either been inadvertent changes to his teachings or overt changes where people have actually intentionally changed his teachings because they don't understand that that's unwise. So in this particular book, in all the entire book series, I'm helping people to understand what did the Buddha actually teach and what he didn't teach. And here at the end of this book, in chapter 24, I share a whole bunch of misunderstandings that you're going to see in the world, because that's actually helping you to be able to see what is the true path to enlightenment. And then I invite you to not believe what I'm sharing, because I teach students not to believe others, but don't believe me either. You can learn, examine, and investigate what it is that I'm sharing with you. You can reflect on it to independently verify it, and you can practice it to be able to see the truth for yourself. And that's where your mind will start to experience more peace and more joy. So we have various courses and retreats to help students to be able to understand the teachings of the Buddha. And it's best if students start in some of our foundational programs, but oftentimes people don't understand that, and they might just be coming in and just joining, and everybody's welcome to anything that I do. There's nothing that I teach that is based on prior knowledge, but there's this program, the Pali Canon English Study Group, that it does help to have some background in some of his teachings to really gain the most insight and benefit out of this particular program. Because on Saturdays, what I do is in volumes 2 through 13, you have the original words of the Buddha to be able to help you see what did he actually teach. And where those other programs that teach in a more traditional method, where I'm teaching 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I open up for questions, I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes and open up for questions. This particular program is more of a study group where I invite students here at the temple and anybody who's joining us in Zoom to be able to read a chapter from our book. We're in actually volume 13 now. And I invite someone to read a chapter. This chapter you can see is actually about a page and a half. And after somebody reads the chapter, then I will share some teachings on that chapter. Then I will open up to whatever questions you guys have. This is the actual original words of the Buddha. So where all the other foundational programs help you to build a foundation or a framework, this program kind of helps you to fill that in. And here we are in volume 13. So it's actually the last book of the book series. So students would have learned a lot of things up to this point. And I'll just kind of give you guys a heads up on some of those things so you'll understand what it is that you're going to be learning in this particular class, because Volume 13 is titled Generosity. This is a topic that the Buddha taught during his lifetime to give and share with other people without any expectation of anything in return, sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. And the reason why he shared this is because it's a practice to be able to train your mind to let go. Because what the mind's doing in the unenlightened state is it has something called craving, desire, attachment. The mind has wants and expectations. The mind is craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants and what it expects, then it experiences painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So the mind is essentially chasing after things. It's longing, it's yearning. It's thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide lasting satisfaction. It's like an unquenchable thirst. The mind's like, I don't feel good here. What's going to make me feel better? More money. That's what'll fix it. Let me chase after some money for a while. And the mind thinks that money is going to make you happy, so you might chase after money for a while. And if you get your money, you're really happy about that. But then that ultimately fades away. And if you don't get your money, then you're angry or frustrated. And then the mind's like, what do I need to be happy? A new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, that'll fix everything. Let me get one of those. So now the mind will chase after that for a while. And then when you get your boyfriend or girlfriend, you'll be happy at the beginning, but then over time, the relationship will deteriorate and you'll be angry and frustrated and agitated. And then the mind's like, what do I need to be happy? I know, I'm going to go to Thailand. That'll fix everything. Let me go to Thailand. And now you might chase after that for a while. Be so excited to go to Thailand, right? And then when it's time to go back to your life, you're like, I don't want to go back home. I just want to stay here in Thailand. They've got mango and sticky rice and massages and elephants. And I just want to stay here, right? The mind doesn't want to go back to whatever life it is that you've created. So the mind, it'll chase and chase and chase and chase. It craves permanence while you live in an impermanent world. So for example, if you get really happy and excited when it's sunny outside, when it rains, you'll be sad or frustrated or angry. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, when it goes down here, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. The only thing that's happened here is change. That's it. It's just change. It's just that the world is impermanent, but the mind is craving permanence. So if you base your inner feeling of happiness on the sun is not permanent. So that means your happiness is impermanent. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because your mind in the unenlightened state is basing its feelings on something external. And the only thing that's happened here is change. It goes from sun to rain. And you can see there's no other person involved here. And this is one of the ways you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, because there's no other person involved. It just went from sun to rain. Or same thing with your bank account. When it goes from here to here, if you get frustrated or annoyed or angry by that, you can see there's no other person involved. It's just change. That's all it is. So when your mind craves permanence and holds on to things while you live in an impermanent world, it doesn't understand. And it can only be happy when it gets what it wants. You could think about a relationship. Like say you've had a boyfriend or girlfriend. When you guys first get together, you might be really happy about that. You guys are going out to the movies, going to dinner, going to the park to have great conversations. Maybe you're having intimate contact like sex and things like this. You might be so happy and excited about that, so much pleasure. But then when you guys break up, you might be angry or sad or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. Oftentimes people think it's their love that is causing that. Love doesn't cause painful feelings. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. That doesn't actually cause painful feelings. What's causing the painful feelings is the mind's holding on to this person, wanting them to be permanent in your life when they're impermanent. Same thing like if grandma or grandpa die, or mom or dad or brothers and sisters, the mind is craving permanence. As long as the mind gets what it wants, which is grandma and grandpa is alive, it's happy. But when the mind doesn't get what it wants, what it expects, then the mind experiences the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, or others. And you need to be able to see this truth for yourself, that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because as long as you go around the world blaming other people for these feelings, you will have unskillful conduct. When the mind thinks that it's something external that's causing these feelings, you will tend to push people away out of your life. You might have done this where you've pushed away friends or family out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that doesn't solve the problem, because you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated, you still get agitated. If this person was the true cause of your feelings, when you push them out of your life, you would be peaceful and joyful from that point forward. Or you might actually be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. The mind firmly believes that it's the outside world that's causing these painful feelings, and you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to those people. It might be like an animal growling and roaring at this other animal, trying to fear them into doing things your way. Or what the mind does also is it might put its expectations on people, or you might be trying to control people or force people to make decisions the way you want them to make it. This is the unskillfulness of the mind, that it pushes people away. It's bitter, harsh, and hostile, and it puts expectations on people. And you might actually have people doing this to you too, that people might be treating you in this way. So this is coming from the mind's belief, which is a false reality, that the mind is actually experiencing these painful feelings because of something external, when in reality, it's the mind itself that's causing these feelings. So remember, don't believe anything that I share. Don't believe anything that other people share. Take a look at this for yourself in your own life. Take a recent situation where you've been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. Might have been this morning or yesterday or last week. Look at that situation with these fresh eyes. What was it that your mind was longing, yearning for? What was it that you were expecting? And if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get it, the mind was angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. You should be able to see this for yourself, but if you can't, let me know and I will help you. Because there's been plenty of students over the years that need help to understand how it is that their own mind is causing these feelings. Because if you can see this for yourself, you can have a breakthrough to understanding what is truly causing these feelings, so that then you can eliminate them. Because if you can eliminate the way that the mind's forming these feelings on something external, where you can just be inwardly peaceful, inwardly happy, inwardly joyful, you can actually maintain this permanently. You can have a permanent mental state where you're completely peaceful and joyful. But as long as you go around the world blaming other people for what it is that you experience, you'll never actually improve this. You'll be angry and stressed and having anxiety for the rest of your life. So you can actually have a breakthrough here today. You can see the mind's holding on and craving permanence. So this meditation that we just did, the goal of this isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off and let them go easier and easier. Because that's what the mind doesn't know how to do in the unenlightened state. It doesn't know how to let go. Right? It's holding on to things really tightly. This is why when you broke up with that boyfriend or girlfriend, you were missing them for a while. You were lonely or bored. You were angry or frustrated because your mind was holding on. But at some point you let go. You said, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. Or you were like, you know what? If she wants to live in another part of the world, so be it. And your mind let go. And that's where your peace and your joy came back. But your mind doesn't know how to let go in the unenlightened state. So this meditation is like exercising the mind, training it to be able to let go. And that's what this generosity does as well. I shared all of that with you to help you understand why we're studying what we're studying here in volume 13 of the book series. Generosity, where you're giving and sharing with people around you, this is training your mind to let go, because your mind doesn't know how to let go in the unenlightened state. When there's craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations in the mind will tend to be selfish. It'll tend to hold on to things. It's like, that's my phone, or that's my money, that's my food, my clothes, my earrings, my jewelry, my glasses, my car, mine. The mind doesn't know how to share with other people. And when we were growing up as children, you might have been taught to share your toys with the people around you, but you weren't necessarily taught why. And then as you grew, that wisdom that wasn't there, as you started making your own decisions to apply effort and energy to work, you might have become somewhat selfish, where you're holding on to things very tight. Maybe if you spend 3 hours doing this, you want this in return. Or if you spend 3 days doing this, maybe you want this in return. And of course, you're going to need to do that to a certain extent in order to be able to sustain your life. You're going to need to be employed and work and earn a certain salary. But you would also like to learn how to give and share with the people around you. This is going to train your mind to understand impermanence and to be able to train your mind to let go. So, for example, if you get your clothing out of the washing machine and you see it's ripped and torn and you get frustrated or agitated with that, that's your mind craving permanence, wanting these clothes to be permanent, where they're actually impermanent. They're not going to be sustained long term. They're going to deteriorate over time. So if you saw that kind of thing occurring and your mind was upset and angry or frustrated that your clothes were ripped and torn, you could start giving away some of your clothes to people. And this generosity is going to train your mind to let go and understand that your clothing is not permanent. If you're noticing when your bank account balance is up here, you're happy. And when it comes down here, you're angry or frustrated. You're attached to your money. You're craving for it to be permanent. It would be wise for you to start giving and sharing with the people around you. You can find some charitable organizations to be able to share your money. If you're noticing like when your jewelry is misplaced and you can't find it, maybe your mind is all shaken up during that period of time where your mind is unsteady and uncalm, you might decide to share your jewelry. You might not be able to give it away, but maybe there's someone you trust that you could let them borrow it for a period of time. You could just give it to them, or even just have them keep it at their house for a period of time. This will train your mind to let go and not hold on to this jewelry, wanting it to be permanent, because the mind can only be happy when you have the jewelry. And when you don't have the jewelry, the mind is angry or frustrated or shaken up and having stress or anxiety. So this generosity of giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources is to train your mind to let go. And this is a consistent ongoing training that the Buddha taught. Just like meditation, he taught you to train your mind through generosity as well. So what I encourage people to do is integrate generosity into their life in a way that's very simple and very straightforward for you. That doesn't require a significant amount of effort to be able to do this. So for example, if you were at the store or at the market buying mangoes for yourself, maybe you know your neighbor likes bananas. Maybe you just take an extra 30 seconds or a minute and toss some bananas into the bag, and now you give those away to your neighbors, right? Or maybe you're on your way into the store and you're noticing that someone's behind you and you're opening the door for yourself. Maybe you take an extra 5 seconds to hold the door for the person behind you. But you need to be careful, because generosity is the giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return. Because if you're standing there holding the door, expecting them to say thank you, and they walk through and they don't say thank you, you'll be frustrated or annoyed. This is the mind craving permanence, wanting everybody to do things a certain way. Maybe when you walk through the door and you see someone holding the door, you might say thank you, which is great. That's a wise decision to make. But not everybody does that because of impermanence. The world is constantly changing around you. So if you're standing there practicing generosity, expecting something, even a thank you, this isn't pure generosity. And this is why the mind would be frustrated or agitated or annoyed in that situation. So you would like to practice generosity for just one reason, because it enhances the quality of the mind. It trains your mind to let go. but you don't want anything or expect anything from anybody for the practice of your generosity. This is what's going to help you to train your mind to let go and get more and more to this peace and joy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let people read this chapter. If there's someone here that would like to volunteer to read it, or if there's someone online, and then I'm going to show you how this program works, where we study the original words of the Buddha. But I was just interested in giving you guys some background of why the Buddha taught generosity. It's important to understand that the Buddha was a prince. He was destined to become a king. He was rich and wealthy. He wasn't teaching people to practice generosity because he was trying to enrich himself. He actually stepped away from that life and he went into a life of homelessness. He actually practiced a significant amount of generosity himself in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So he knew that that was an important part of the teachings to help other people get to enlightenment. So that's why he taught generosity, because he understood that it trains the mind to let go. So if there's someone here that would like to volunteer to read, we have microphones in the white bowl in the middle of the room. All you need to do is get a microphone, bring it back to your seat, press the gray button, and you'll see the lights come on the microphone. And you can hold this up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then you can keep these microphones with you, because you might have a question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can share the microphones around. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll help us to not get feedback through the speakers. And then for anybody who's in Zoom, if you would like to volunteer to read, you can electronically raise your hand. I'll be able to see that, and then you can unmute your microphone, and you'll be able to hear you here, and they'll be able to hear you through the live stream. And then when we get through the question period, anyone who's in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, if you'd like to ask questions, you can put it in the comment section. I'll be able to see that. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and unmute your microphone to ask questions that way. So is there anybody here, anybody in Zoom who would like to volunteer to read this first chapter? Pat? Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Not doing chapters 50.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention. So normally we start at, in this example, would be chapter 51, and then we would continue on through the program from there. But because of the group here, I know that 51 and 52 isn't the best chapters to read, so I'm starting at 53 today.
Factors leading to a great mass of merit. Monks. The female household practitioner, Kantaki Nam Damada, is preparing an offering possessed of 6 factors for the community of monks, headed by Sariputta and Moggallana. And how is an offering possessed of 6 factors? Here, the donor has 3 factors, and the recipients have 3 factors. What are the 3 factors of the donor? 1, the donor is joyful before giving. 2, she has a calm, confident mind in the act of giving. And 3, she is joyful after giving. These are the 3 factors of the donor. What are the 3 factors of the recipients? Here, 4, the recipients are free of craving or are practicing to remove craving. 5, they are free of anger or are practicing to remove anger. 6, they are free of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, or are practicing to remove ignorance, unknowing of true reality. These are the 3 factors of the recipients. Thus, the donor has 3 factors, and the recipients have 3 factors. In such a way, the offering possesses 6 factors. It is not easy to measure the merit of such an offering thus. Just so much as a stream of merit, stream of the unwholesome, nutriment of peacefulness, heavenly, ripening in peacefulness, conducive to heaven, that leads to what is aspired for, needed, and agreeable to one's welfare and peacefulness. Rather, it is considered simply to be an incalculable, immeasurable, great mass of merit. Monks, just as it is not easy to measure the water in the great ocean, thus, there are so many gallons of water, or there are so many hundreds of gallons of water, or there are many thousands of gallons of water, or there are so many hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. But rather it is considered such as an incalculable, immeasurable, great mass of water. Prior to giving, one is joyful. While giving, one settles the mind in trust. After giving, one is joyful. This is success in the act of offering. When they are free of craving and anger, free of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, without paints, fetters, mentally disciplined, living the spiritual life, the field for the offering is complete. Having cleansed oneself and given with one's own hands, the act of charity is very fruitful for oneself in relation to others. Having performed such a charitable deed with a mind free from selfishness, the wise person, rich in confidence, is reborn in a happy, non-afflictive world.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So I'm going to start up here at the top and kind of walk you guys through to help you more fully understand what the Buddha teaches. He teaches very clear, very concise, and very precise, but it's helpful to have a dedicated practitioner and dedicated teacher to be able to guide you through understanding. But then you don't believe what it is that a teacher's sharing. You need to learn, investigate, and examine on your own. You reflect on those teachings to independently verify them, and then you practice them to be able to see the truth for yourself. So while the Buddha teaches very clear and concise, there's sometimes where you're learning a discourse like this, particularly at the end of this book series, where it's connected to other teachings. And if you haven't learned those other teachings, you need help to be able to understand what those other teachings are. So I'm going to walk you through this. So the way that the Buddha would oftentimes teach is he would just wait for students to ask him questions, and then he would answer those questions. And that's how he would teach, because then he knew that a student was interested in what it is that he had to share. Where today we have, organized classes and stuff like this, courses where students are choosing to come to class. They did some of that kind of stuff during the lifetime of the Buddha too, but oftentimes he would just be sitting in a village and somebody would come and start asking him questions, and then he would just answer their question and reply to them. This is a way to teach without conceit, where he's only teaching people that are truly interested in learning his teachings. He wasn't trying to push his teachings into the world. He wasn't trying to convince people of what they should or shouldn't be doing in the world. He was making himself available to those people who were interested in getting to this peaceful and joyful mental state. If they were interested in experiencing that for themselves, he made himself available to those people to be able to figure out how to do that. So he just helped people that were interested in his help. And this is wise even today. So here, the Buddha is saying this female household practitioner is preparing an offering possessed of 6 factors for the community of monks, headed by Sariputta and Mangalana. These are 2 of his main students. These are like 2 of his most deeply practiced students. And oftentimes people would make offerings to the ordained practitioners or to teachers. This happens today too, because it's part of the generosity, and it also helps those teachers and those ordained practitioners to kind of step away from worldly life, where they don't need to have a career, they don't need to work at a particular job. They can just work on developing their wisdom and the path to enlightenment. And then as they become more and more enlightened, more and more awake, they have deeper wisdom, they can then share that with other people to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. So this started all the way back during the lifetime of the Buddha, that people would make offerings to ordained practitioners and teachers so they could step away from their life, and they were accepting things like food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he didn't even accept currency, which at the time was gold and silver. He didn't accept this as an offering. He only accepted food, clothing, shelter, and medical care because he lived right alongside of his students, and they could provide him everything he needed to sustain his life. That's all he needed. But today we accept financial support because there's things like electric and water bills and things like this that need to be paid. So some students do offer financial support to a teacher, to ordained practitioner, so that we can use that to be able to purchase the things that we need, because there's not always students standing by to be able to purchase those things. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, not only did he not accept currency, but he didn't accept land, he didn't accept animals. Sometimes people would try to offer him slaves because they had slaves during that period of time, or women. Sometimes people looked at women as property. The Buddha didn't look at women as property, so he didn't actually accept these as offerings. So the Buddha only accepted food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. And whenever you're making an offering to a teacher or an ordained practitioner, the Buddha is teaching you how to make sure that that offering has the benefit that you're looking for, which is to enhance the quality of your mind, and then also help the community to continue to sustain itself, to be able to share the teachings into the world so that other people can get access to this wisdom. So since he's talking to a female, and he's talking about this female of how to make this offering, he gives 3 factors that would be wise to practice as you're making an offering. That before you're giving, he talks about having the mind to be joyful. In the act of giving, the mind should be calm and confident. And then after giving, the mind should still be joyful. This actually protects the mind and makes sure that you don't have any kind of remorse in the mind and that you've thought through your offering. Because everything the Buddha teaches is based in discernment or wise decision making and doing things from the middle way. So if you were to practice generosity where you were overextending yourself and you were giving a lot, you wouldn't have the basic necessities that you need in order to sustain your life. But if you were all the way on the other side, where you were never sharing with other people, the mind's going to be quite selfish in that situation. So you'd like to come to the middle where you're able to share with other people, but you're doing that in a moderate amount so that way you have the things that you need in order to sustain your life. And you need to practice discernment as you're making any kind of offering. Discernment in terms of your own well-being. You need to make sure you're not harming yourself as you're making offerings. So the Buddha teaches you to be joyful before giving. That means that you've put some thought into what it is that you're going to actually give. Because if your mind's not joyful before giving, then that means you haven't put any thought into what you're giving, and maybe you're giving too much. And you're like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to give this away. This is way too much. I'm not going to have what I need. But then if you're on the other side, where maybe you're like, oh, why am I only giving this small amount of whatever it is that you're giving, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources? Why am I giving such a small amount? I'm so stingy. I'm so selfish. The mind's not joyful in this situation. So you'd like to come to the middle where your mind can be joyful before actually giving, meaning you've put some thought into what it is that you're going to give. Then in the act of giving, you would like your mind to be calm and confident. A calm and confident mind is a stable and steady mind. That sometimes when you're making an offering to an ordained practitioner or teacher, your mind might be shaken up in the act of that, because the mind in the unenlightened state has conceit, which is ego or arrogance, where an individual might look down on somebody, or you might look up to someone with such awe that now when you're around that person, you're kind of shaken up. If you've ever gone into your boss's office and you're uncalm and unsteady, this is your mind having conceit, where you're measuring and comparing people and you're putting yourself either above people or below people. And now because of the mind's pollution, it can be shaken up in this situation. So the same thing is true when you're making an offering to someone. Your mind could maybe potentially be putting yourself below this person, and your mind could be shaken up. So the Buddha teaches you to be calm and confident when you're making an offering to someone. And then after giving, the Buddha teaches you to have a calm mind during giving and a confident mind during giving, but after giving, the mind should also be joyful. So again, that there's not any remorse, like, oh my gosh, why did I give so much? Now I'm not going to be able to pay my rent, or I don't have food for myself. Oh my gosh, why did I give all that food away? Or you could be on the other side where it's like, oh my gosh, why did I only give that amount? Man, I'm so selfish, right? You could have remorse at the end of an offering. So the Buddha is teaching you not to be able to do that by practicing these three things. These three factors will protect your mind. Be joyful before giving, calm and confident while giving, and joyful after giving. And now your mind can be peaceful and joyful. It's well protected. But then he also talks about how to not only ensure that your mind is protected and that you're getting the most benefit in terms of enhancing the quality of your mind, but he's also teaching you how to make sure that your offering has benefit to the community. The community is the community of practitioners, teachers, ordained practitioners, household practitioners. All these people are practicing the teachings to be able to get closer and closer to enlightenment. And as more and more people in a community are wise about what it takes to get to enlightenment, it'll be actually easier for people to gain that wisdom and move closer and closer to enlightenment. If you can imagine during the lifetime of a Buddha, there's countless people that are learning from a Buddha, right? And there's kind of like a core group of people who are learning really closely, but then there's people on the outer edges who are kind of like not really learning so closely. They're around, they're participating in the community, but they're not really deeply learning the teachings. So the Buddha, when he talks about making offerings, he talks about making offerings to people who are deeply practicing the teachings, because that's going to ensure that the teachings continue in the world. A Buddha's sole focus in life is to be able to see the teachings teachings reach the wider audience of people, the masses, and for those teachings to be able to continue long after their death. And the best way to ensure that the teachings continue long after a Buddha's death is to make sure that there's plenty of people who are enlightened by the time that person actually dies. Because if people understand the teachings within their mind, then those teachings will continue. It's great to nowadays have books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts, and all these other things. That's great, but you'll never get to enlightenment by just reading a book. You're going to actually need to learn and practice with a real live teacher. And by you doing that, then your mind becoming more and more enlightened, you'll never forget the teachings that it took for you to get to enlightenment. So a Buddha is interested in seeing their teachings continue in the world, and they know the best way to do that is to help people get to enlightenment, because the wisdom that they cultivate in their journey to enlightenment, they won't forget that wisdom, and they'll be able to share that wisdom with other people. Even a Buddha writing a book, for example, they wouldn't be able to write the book in such a way that people could just read a book and then get to enlightenment. It's just not possible. So the teachings actually need to be within an individual's mind to be able to then be shared with other people as people are interested in learning that. So here the Buddha is talking about the recipient of an offering. He talks about qualities to look for, which he talks about an individual who's free of craving, free of anger, and free of ignorance. This is the way that we refer to the pollutions of the mind from a high level. The most deepest level of detail is called the 10 fetters. These are 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind. But when we talk about them from a high level, it's referred to as craving, anger, and ignorance. I already talked to you a little bit about craving and anger. Craving is that longing, yearning, the mind wanting things to be a certain way and only happy when it gets what it wants. And then there's these painful feelings that arise if the mind doesn't get what it wants. And one of those painful things is anger and hostility that can arise in the mind. And that's where someone might push someone away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put expectations on people. And where all that's coming from is referred to as ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom. It's because of that craving and anger continues to exist in the mind. Most people in the world firmly believe that it's the outside world that is causing your discontent feelings. You might firmly believe your mom and dad are making you angry, or your brothers and sisters are frustrating, or your boss is annoying you. But if you look at this with clear eyes and fresh eyes, you'll be able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. But because of the lack of wisdom, because of that unknowing of true reality, because of the misunderstanding, or some people refer to it as ignorance, the mind just can't see it. It has difficulty seeing it. So that's why the ultimate goal in this path is to cultivate wisdom, because that's what's going to transform the mind. So while some people call this ignorance, this is a translation that people are making today. I suspect that the Buddha did not use the word ignorance during his lifetime, because that's a derogatory or demeaning way to refer to somebody. That would be diminishing somebody else. And an enlightened being wouldn't refer to someone in a derogatory, degrading, and diminishing way. So that's why I offer this phrase, a knowing of true reality, as a better way to understand this particular pollution of the mind, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And that's why the ultimate goal on the path to enlightenment is to cultivate wisdom. So while we call this craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of ignorance that the mind continues to crave and it continues to have anger. If it wasn't for this ignorance, the mind would have already eliminated its craving and anger. So that's what you're doing on the path to enlightenment, is uprooting this out of the mind. So if you're making an offering to someone who's free of craving, free of anger, and free of ignorance, that means they're enlightened. And the Buddha guided people to be able to make offerings to people who are either enlightened or very close to it, because that's actually helping you come in contact with someone who has wisdom about the path to enlightenment. And now as you're making your offering, you'll be able to learn the path yourself to be able to help you get to enlightenment. Where, like I mentioned, if you can imagine, during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were countless people who were learning from him. And if you were interacting with the people who are very close and deeply practicing the teachings, that means that's very helpful for you, because you're cultivating the wisdom that you need to be able to make your way to enlightenment. So there's this freedom of craving, anger, and ignorance that the Buddha talks about, but also he talks about they're practicing for the removal of craving, anger, and ignorance. So they're on their way. They haven't gotten to enlightenment yet, but you can actively see that that's what they're working towards. And the Buddha says that this would be a wise person for you to be able to make offerings to, because now you can actually come in contact with someone that's actually going to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. Now, the Buddha understood that for someone just starting out on the path, for you to be able to tell whether someone's free of craving, anger, and ignorance is quite challenging, because you don't have much wisdom when you're first on the path to enlightenment to discern this and figure this out. So there's other discourses where he gives you kind of like a more of a shorthand way of figuring this out to be able to understand whether it would be wise for you to make offerings to someone or not. He says that if you notice someone that has a muddled mind, that it would be unwise to make offerings to this person. A muddled mind would be lacking concentration, where they're not clearly able to explain the teachings. When you interact with someone who can clearly explain the teachings to you, this is because they practice the teachings deeply, that they understand them because they're practicing the teachings, and they've removed the pollutions out of their mind so that their mind is actually performing optimally. So if you're noticing that someone's muddle-minded, or they're lacking comprehension and clarity in the way that they're sharing teachings, the Buddha shares with you that it would be unwise to make an offering to that person because they're not actually practicing the teachings closely. If you're noticing people doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer, things like this, you know that they're not actually practicing the teachings closely because they're not understanding the number one goal on the path to enlightenment, which is to cultivate wisdom. So the Buddha teaches you to practice discernment, or wise decision-making, in all aspects of your life, including when you practice generosity, that it would be wise to practice generosity with individuals who are deeply steeped in the teachings, that deeply understand the teachings and are deeply practicing the teachings, because that makes sure that the teachings can continue in the world and be accessible to many people. So these are just kind of some shortcut ways that you can look at someone's mind. And you would always like to do this without judgment or without looking down on people. You would like to just observe the people that you're spending time with in terms of teachers and ordained practitioners, and decide whether or not this is someone that you would like to make offerings to. Not in a judgmental way, but just understanding that the resources that you share, your time, effort, energy, and resources, it's going to go to some use. And if you're making offerings to someone who, say, is using drugs or alcohol as an ordained practitioner, as a teacher, they're not practicing the teachings closely, and your money is going to go, or your offering, your time and effort is going to go towards supporting that. Or let's just say they're gambling, or let's just say they're involved in other types of unwise conduct. Your support is actually going to that type of thing. So the Buddha teaches you to support individuals who are actually practicing his teachings closely. Because you're going to see in the news occasionally where there might be ordained practitioners or teachers who are using drugs and alcohol, or who are abusing people, maybe children, sexually, or things of this nature, or maybe they're doing some other corrupt things. That's not what the Buddha actually taught. And I would suggest that those people actually aren't monks in the way that the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught that in order to be a true monk, you need to be practicing the teachings. Wearing an orange robe, shaving your hair, doesn't mean that you're a monk. Wearing white clothes and shaving your hair doesn't mean that you're actually practicing the teachings closely. So as an individual who's interested in discernment, you would actually like to make sure that you understand the person you're making an offering to, and that your offering is going to be beneficial in that particular community. You should see that there's a thriving community of teachings being shared to help people grow and develop on the path. Because as you watch the news, as you see different things, you're going to see people involved in various things that aren't part of the teachings of the Buddha. And he gave a very great analogy on this, a very good story. He talks about if he was a cow and he was walking on the earth during rainy season, and the earth is really soft, and he was leaving behind hoof prints as a cow, and that there's a donkey behind him, and this donkey is putting his hooves in the same hoof prints as the cow, and the donkey thinks, I'm a cow, I'm a cow, I'm a cow. The fact that the donkey is putting its hoof prints in the same hoof prints as the cow, and the donkey thinks it's a cow, does that make the donkey a cow? Well, of course not, right? Just the fact that the donkey is putting its hooves in the same hoof prints as a cow and the donkey thinks it's a cow doesn't mean it's a cow, right? It's the actions that determine this. So just because someone wears an orange robe or white clothes or shaves their hair doesn't mean that they're practicing the teachings closely. And it's wise for you to be able to make sure you practice discernment, that whenever you make offerings of your time, effort, energy, or resources, that it's going to a place that can actually use that in a beneficial way. And this would be wise of you as you're enhancing the quality of your mind and practicing generosity, training your mind to let go, that you're making offerings to a organization or a person who's actually going to do something wonderful with that offering that you're sharing. So that's what the Buddha is giving guidance here for, about these 3 factors of making sure that if you're going to make an offering to an ordained practitioner or teacher, that they're either enlightened or very close to it. And there's other discourses where he gives more detail on this, but this one is just kind of like a little bit of a summary. Then he goes through some other things here, which we could talk about if you guys would like. It's really up to you. I'm not sure how much detail you guys would like to get into all of these things that he's talking about. But one thing that I'll share down here, since he mentions it, I think he might have even mentioned it up here somewhere as well, where he talks about being reborn in a good destination. He's talking here about being reborn in a happy destination. I think up here he even talks about heaven. It's important to understand that that's not the goal of the teachings of the Buddha. The goal of the teachings of the Buddha isn't to believe a bunch of things or even do a bunch of things in this life and then be reborn in heaven. Heaven is not a permanent existence. Everything around you is constantly changing. You can see the universal truth of impermanence, that there's nothing in this material world that is permanent. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people believing that heaven is permanent. And if you're a really good person in this life, that you're going to die and go to heaven and live in heaven for the rest of your life, in this wonderful life. This isn't what the Buddha taught. He's actually teaching you to get to a wonderful life now, in this life. So if there's certain aspects of your life that you don't particularly care for and you don't like what's going on in your life, you can actually cultivate wisdom. You can make different decisions and you will experience different results. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you to be able to do, is create this wonderful life for yourself now. But the thing is that anything that he's teaching you that's helping you to get to that wonderful life and get to enlightenment, if you fall short of that for any reason, there's the potential that you could be reborn in this heavenly world. But even in that heavenly world, you still need to get to enlightenment. You're still in the cycle of rebirth, being reborn over and over and over and over again. Now, as you guys heard me share, there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that are based in belief, including the cycle of rebirth. You can actually independently verify the cycle of rebirth. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. Maybe just right now you can't remember your past lives. But as you train your mind and you're lifting this pollution out of your mind, you might actually start having memories of your past lives. Some of you might have already started having those kinds of things. So there's ways for you to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But here in this particular discourse, he does talk about rebirth because this practice of generosity, as you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment from your mind, not only are you getting closer to enlightenment, but if you fall short of enlightenment for any reason, there's the potential to be reborn in the heavenly world. But even from there, you still need to get to enlightenment and escape out of this continuous cycle of rebirth. That's not a permanent existence, and those beings can oftentimes be reborn into other realms throughout this cycle of rebirth. So I'm just going to stop here and see what questions you guys have on this particular teaching. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or here at the temple. If you guys could use the microphones, that'd be great. Are there any questions that you guys have on this chapter? Anything that I've been talking about all morning? No questions? Okay. Let's see. I've done a lot of talking this morning, sharing a lot of things with you guys. All right, let me see what the next chapter is, because it's just about 10:30. This is when we usually end our class. I think we'll just end class here. Seems like you guys don't have any questions. It's almost 10:30. Why don't we just end class here? So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking you for coming. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the path to enlightenment. This is just one aspect of the path to enlightenment. And you can see why people don't typically start here, because this is volume 13. There's some core central teachings for you to be able to learn and understand. And you can learn those through our other programs, like tomorrow at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. here at the temple. Be a great opportunity for you to be able to learn. And we live stream this and record it so it's available for everyone. Tomorrow at 6:30, I'm going to be in the main hall hall over there. I'm going to be doing meditation with students and then just opening up to any and all questions that you guys have. So you're welcome to attend that if you like. On Wednesday, I'll be here in the classroom at 9 a.m. I'll be doing meditation with students and then opening up to questions that you guys have. So tomorrow, like I mentioned, there's a topic of misunderstandings of the teachings of the Buddha. This will actually really help you to be able to understand what his teachings are, is to be able to understand what the misunderstandings are. So if you'd like to come to any of our events, you'll find those on our bulletin board over there. You'll also find them on our website. You're more than welcome to check those out. I recommend for people to learn with the first book, to start with that. If you're interested in getting to this peace and joyful mental state where you don't experience anger and sadness any longer, you can actually heal from what's hurting you so that you never need to hurt ever again. That's what the teachings of the Buddha are all about, doing this inner work to heal from what hurts you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is inside your own mind. It's not the outside world. You'll never get to peace and joy by trying to change other people and try to get them to do things your way, because there's 8 billion people in the world and you can't train them all to do things your way. But you can train your mind to get to peace and joy. So this first book, you can download it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it yourself. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. And you guys are always welcome to talk with me, and I'm pleased to help you guys to be able to journey on this path and get plugged in to all the various resources that you need. So whatever you guys choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.